back in session. Remain seated and quiet.
Madam, back on the record. You may be seated. I want to let members of the media know, and as well as the people who are here, the defendant has a constitutional right to read. Where is he?
It's not out yet.
It's coming.
That is what.
The defendant has a constitutional right to review his pre-sentence report because that's going to follow him. This is going to be a lengthy process. So those reporters who have somewhere else to be, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an opportunity to leave. So if you feel that you can't stay because you have other matters, then why don't you go ahead and just go now? But I'm not going to violate anybody's rights because that's my job. Just like you have a job, I have a job. And if what I'm doing is keeping you from doing what you want to do or something else, you can leave now. Seeing that nobody's gotten up, I'm ready to proceed. You've had an opportunity to the defense to review the pre-sentence report with Mr. Bashara.
We did, Your Honor, and we do have two items that I'd like to just put out to the court. They're both on page 25
Please.
of the pre-sentence report. And under the heading of substance abuse, there is a second sentence, or a third sentence rather, that reads, however, the police investigation revealed the defendant obtained cocaine in June of 2012. Judge, Mr. Bashara wants his objection to that noted for the record. He believes that the balance of that section is accurate.
Page 25, you said, sir?
Page 25, under the heading of substance abuse.
I see, yes, sir. He indicates what, sir? I'm sorry.
He indicates that that's not accurate and would like to have that stricken from
Very
the
good.
report.
I just indicated the defendant denies.
Oh. Thank you.
Anything else?
There's one other thing. It also begins on the bottom of page 25, and this is a correction in the final paragraph, the first sentence. Furthermore, he suffers from hypertension and is prescribed Carbaz and Metoprolol. Mr. Bashara informed me that his medications have been changed since the date that this report was written, but now, since he was returned to the Oaks Correctional Facility, they gave him different medication. And secondly, there's a second sentence that begins on that page, and it says that he is prescribed Valium to aid in relaxation, and he informed me that since this report was written, he no longer receives Valium.
Okay.
Now, Judge, we went through the balance of the report together. There are no other corrections or additions to make to the report.
Other than the 8-page.
It's not 8 pages, Judge.
How many?
It is 3 pages. And if, just so the record is clear, I will type this up, but I would like for this to be submitted in Mr. Bashara's own hand. So there is no mistake. There's nothing that's going to be impugning the integrity of these lawyers. Or this one.
Excuse me. Oh, very good. Thank you, Madam. Madam Clerk, I'm going to tender this to you. Make that 1, defendants 1 and 2, and then we'll do with his own handwriting so we can proceed at this point.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Very good. Now, what was this about the 1-day credit?
Well, Judge, I think that the report is accurate in the way the time is calculated, but the way I understand the Department of Corrections calculation does not include the day of sentencing. And so through today, then there would be one more day, but I think beyond that, the number that's in the report is an accurate number.
Okay, very good.
May I, Judge, just for the record, so it's clear. Mr. Bashara, may I, Judge?
You may.
Thank you. Mr. Bashara, you have had an opportunity to review the pre-sentence investigation report, correct, sir?
Yes.
And you have heard the corrections therein that you have authorized and said were to be corrected, correct?
Yes.
Are there any other corrections, additions, or deletions outside of the addendum of what you call community service to be made to the report?
No.
Thank you so much, Judge.
Very good. On behalf of the people.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll speak for the team on this, Patrick Muscat. Just briefly, Your Honor, In regards to the sentences, of course, the court knows for the first sentence, count one, statutorily that should be a life sentence, parolable life sentence. We defer to the discretion of the court regarding count two, solicitation. Count three is murder first degree premeditated. That's a mandatory sentence, life without parole. And then we would defer to the discretion of the court for obstruction of justice and the fifth count. There are two members from the family that would like to address the court, and I'll ask them to come to the podium. Is that where you want them, Judge? They're in the second row back. I'll have them come up one at a time. Would you like them at the podium?
I would.
Okay.
Step forward. State your name for the record, ma'am, when you get to the podium.
Good afternoon. Julie Rowe, Jane
Okay.
Bashara's sister.
But I need you just to speak up a little bit because your voice is going down a little bit. You may proceed.
My name is Julie Rowe. I'm Jane Bashara's sister. I'm going to read a statement on behalf of my family and myself. My family appreciates the monumental effort that was put forth by the court, Judge Evans, the jury, and the multiple law enforcement agencies and individuals who brought Jane's killers to justice. We recognize that not every family of a murder victim receives the justice and closure that we have, and we feel very grateful and fortunate. During the almost 3-year-long investigation, we have worked hard to stay healthy as a family, to stick together, to mourn Jane, and to live our daily lives, and it's been a long road. Given that the crimes addressed today carry a sentence of life in prison without parole, we are especially grateful for this opportunity to speak. My sister Jane was married to Bob Bashara for 26 years, and she was utterly faithful and devoted to him the entire time. She gave him a beautiful family and took care of his home and comforts, and as she did with everything else in her life, Jane put 110% into her marriage and her family. For years, she tried to take care of Bob by getting him to eat better, take better care of his health, be the best version of himself he could be. She supported him and she was committed to him, and she would have done just about anything for Bob except open up her 401k. And it is this reluctance to allow him access to her life savings that ultimately led Bob to kill her. This crime has had a devastating impact on my family and extended family. We each have been forced to live in a new reality, one in which society's most heinous crimes have been committed against one of our own, a reality where Jane has died a gruesome death, and instead of comforting each other and grieving our loss, we have been forced to deal with all that has transpired over the past 3 years. To varying degrees, we have all felt frightened, angry, sad, and anxious. Bob lied to all of us. Bob manipulated all of us. Bob utterly betrayed all of us. Some of us have sought help through counseling. Some have found relief through medicine. Some have found comfort in religion. And some grieve alone. Anyone who has followed our story knows that this crime has had a heartbreaking and far-reaching impact on all our lives. Even people who barely knew Jane have been impacted by the manner of her death. This crime has had an especially debilitating impact on Jane's mother, my mother. My mom is a strong lady, but she has struggled to keep her chin up. This is not only because of the brutal murder and loss of Jane, but from the deep betrayal, lengthy investigation, and the never-ending drama that Bob and his team have heaped on her. Jane was the foundation of my mom and dad's support and social network. She lived nearby, checked on them often, went to the same church, and frequently had them over for dinner or cards. This crime and investigation, along with my father's death from Alzheimer's complications in March of 2014, has been a lot for my mom to deal with, and now she is sad. She's become isolated from her church and many of the activities she used to enjoy. Bob broke her heart and rubbed salt in her wounds, holding Jane's ashes hostage and trying to bribe support. Who does that? This has been overwhelming for my mom, and she has felt vulnerable and afraid. Not only is she afraid because Bob is a murderer, but he has repeatedly attempted to scare her and others in our family by sending his helpers, attorneys, insurance companies, and whatever he could think of to try to intimidate, manipulate, hurt, and frighten, presumably because of our lack of support. My family is very relieved that the sentence for these crimes is life in prison without parole. We ask those in power to never forget the depth of Bob's betrayals and crimes, to never believe a word that comes out of his mouth, and to never, ever let him out of prison. It is our desire that he stay as healthy as possible and live many years, and that each day of each of those years is spent in a concrete cell. Everything about this situation, from the murder of Jane to the hiding of the gun for 14 months to Jane's ashes being stolen, was just so avoidable and preventable and unnecessary, just makes it all that much sadder. So after all of this, what do you say to someone who doesn't have a heart? How do you convey the emotion behind such a devastating loss to a psychopath who can't love and who doesn't have the capacity to experience real human emotion? I'm fully aware of the fact that anything I say today will not really be heard by this ridiculous failure of a man, but I have something to say to you, Bob, anyway, on this, the day of your sentencing for the murder of my sister, and the last day that you get any attention from any of us. You killed my amazing sister. How could you? She had so much left to do. She had so many plans. You stole her life, betrayed her in the most evil way possible, and watched as she died in horror and pain. You robbed all of us of her wisdom, a lifetime of memories we should have had with her. You've devastated your children's and my family's lives by your stupid, cowardly, and foolish acts. You've broken my mother's heart 1,000 times over. She loved and trusted you more than anyone else in our family. And despite every advantage that you were given throughout your life, you have ultimately managed to throw it all away and ruin your own life. This is how you will be remembered. You've ensured that everyone and everything you ever had is gone, and the only place you are going is to prison. But rest assured, I will go on. And we as a family will go on. Your crimes, actions, attitudes, and behavior have led us all to have a stronger bond. And for me personally, after this experience, now that I actually know someone who's spending his life in prison, I am acutely aware and appreciative of every precious moment. Because every day, every minute that you spend on your slab in your cell, I will be out experiencing life and enjoying my freedom. I will be watching over Jessica and Robert, loving them and sharing their life experiences. I will support their endeavors. I will celebrate their successes. I'll be at their weddings, and I'll hold Jane's grandchildren in my arms. I will come and go as I please. And I will be free with Jane's spirit by my side as I live my life to the fullest. I will spend my life with my husband, raising our son, and watching over Jane's family in her absence. And I will do it with a clear conscience and a pure heart, knowing that I've honored my sister. And all of it, every moment, will be all the more sweet, knowing that you are uncomfortable, miserable, alone and in prison where you belong for the rest of your pathetic life. Thank you for your
so
time.
much, Ms. Wright. We have another family representative.
Yes, Judge.
Is that person available?
Yes, she's coming up.
Okay, state your name for the record, ma'am.
My name is Lorraine Engelbrecht, and I am Jane's mother. I miss Jane terribly. Every day. There will never, ever be closure for what he did to my daughter. I can't, every day of my life, I ask, why didn't he just go and live his scummy dungeon life and leave my daughter and my grandchildren alone? Why did it have to come to that? Every day, while you're sitting in jail, take 3 or 4 minutes and think about how you watched Jane die in her garage. I want you to do that. And by the way, it's not called open marriage, it's called double life that you had. You came on and tried to degrade, after everything else, Jane's character. That's all I have to say. But you took Jane's life, but I want you to live a while, because I'm not going to be here that long, but every day I live, I want to think about you rotting in jail and someday burning in hell. That's what I think.
On behalf of the people,
Your Honor, the only thing I would point out is, and the record speaks for this, and the court did an excellent job maintaining this, but thank you, ma'am, that was very good, thank you. There was no live streaming during this trial, as the record well speaks, but I'm not going to address any of the other issues Mr. Bashara brought up, but there was no live streaming
okay,
during this
all
trial.
right, here you go.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. On behalf of the defense,
Your Honor, the defense recognizes the fact that for the most substantial charge here, first-degree premeditated murder, there is no discretion, that the court must impose the sanction that is set by law, and that any allocution on my part or Mrs. Diallo's would not change that reality. So we are ready for the imposition of sentence.
okay, very good, Mr. Bashir. You have an opportunity to address this court to allocute.
Yes, ma'am, I wish to take that opportunity.
Okay, very good.
Your Honor, in my pre-sentence report, the statement that I made, I will continue to make again and again and again, which says I am innocent, that I had nothing to do with my wife's death, terrible, terrible death, and that I will continue to appeal this sentence brought by this prosecution and witnesses that lied, misstated the truth, and painted a different picture than what was true. To my mother-in-law,
Judge, could we ask that he turn around and address the court?
Please.
Thank you.
to my mother-in-law, and to all of her family who have known me for 30 years, I have provided love and comfort and caring for the entire family. Their daughter, number one, throughout my life that I knew Jane, I loved her, I comforted her, I delivered both of our children, and immediately called my mother-in-law and my family to come and witness and be there as the children were hours old. Comforting Jane as she recovered from childbirth, comforting her as she recovered from an auto accident that removed 4 or 5 of her teeth that she spent years perfecting. I loved my Jane dearly and have done absolutely nothing to harm her. I did not murder her. I did not conspire with anyone, especially Mr. Gentz, nor did I solicit him for this crime. I would like to read a letter that I received, and I'm going to deduct certain parts of it. I was at Macomb Prison, and there's a time frame, and there's a name. I was in 2 block with prisoner Joe Gentz, and a few times he would change up his story about buying a car and say that a guy named Bashara was not paying him to kill his wife, and he lied to get less time off of his sentence. That he worked for the money given to him, not killing Bashara's wife, and would always say, women, and I'm quoting this, women are whores and they all deserve to die. Really, the ones that took his daughter. There were a lot of other prisoners around that would hear him say these exact same things. Now, in the discovery, I am to the understanding that you actually received a letter from one of the inmates, and I never saw that letter. If that was given to defense, or if it was, I don't know if it was shared, and I don't know the contents of that letter. But I want to say to Jane's family, I want to say to my mother and my children, that I will never, ever stop fighting for justice and the truth until my hands are raw, blood comes from my eyes, and I take my last breath. I will appeal these charges as I am innocent of anything to do with my wife's death. Sadly, I rue every day that I tried to help this man Gens and bring him into my life. I have brought other tenants into our relationship. I've had Lee and Bob help my mother-in-law, Lorraine, move and help them with different projects. I've exposed tenants who I felt relatively comfortable to certain aspects of my life. They've helped clean out back, prepare the house as Mr. Gens did with me for bushes and yard cleanup that we did every year. I will never forgive myself for exposing this man to my family and specifically to Jane. For that, my heart is saddened and it breaks. This prosecution and these law enforcement agents have negatively affected my family by using the media to attack me. They have turned everyone away from me. And I'm reminded, Your Honor, of the story of Job. Now, I will admit clearly that I am nowhere near as blameless as Job was before the Lord. I have done things in my life that I look back and I'm not 100% proud of. But I had absolutely, and I hope my mother-in-law is listening to this, I had absolutely nothing to do with my wife's death. Your Honor, I ask you for this court's mercy. This court has helped me with my health issues and some of my issues related. I will, as I said, appeal this until I can appeal no more. I thank you for your indulgence and your time. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Diallo, there was something that you wanted to say.
Judges, to the guideline scoring, whenever you're ready for that.
Okay.
I do believe that the PRVs are properly scored in this particular matter. I would make a challenge, Judge, to OV7
Okay.
in this particular matter. Here.
Go ahead.
Okay. Your Honor did hear the testimony, and it's certainly disturbing testimony, but I would challenge the OV7. And we believe that, to court's discretion, we believe that the homicide guidelines were meant to address what happened in this particular matter with Ms. Bashara, and I think 7 is just a little bit too much. I don't necessarily think that was developed on this particular record, Judge.
Your Honor, OV7 is aggravated physical abuse. The defendant was properly scored 50 points because the victim was treated with sadism, torture, or excessive brutality. The medical examiner's testimony alone detailed the painful process that the victim went through before she died. This was not a gunshot case. This was a long, drawn-out death. She started, through the process, she was conscious until at some point she lost conscious permanently.
I'm leaving it at 50 points. Okay, 50 points. Okay, what else?
That would be a judge.
All right, here.
I believe everything else is properly scored in this particular matter. And we would ask for a sentence within the guidelines. We would ask, as Mr. McCarthy said, that as far as counts 1 and 2, that he be given life with parole in that particular matter as it is allowed under the law and the statute. And then as to 3, you have no discretion. 4 and 5, we'd ask that you stay within the guidelines.
Judge, just to be fair, the count 1 requires a sentence of life without parole. Count 2 is discretionary
Oh, yes.
within the term of years. Count 3 requires a life of sentence without parole. And then counts 4 and 5 require guideline sentences.
He is correct, Judge. I do apologize.
Okay, Gary, did you?
Thank you, Judge.
They say that what separates privilege from entitlement is gratitude. You had none. You were a product of privilege, a privileged life. Your mother was wealthy. Your father was a prominent Court of Appeals judge. When the divorce occurred, like many women raising their children, they trained their girls to be women, and they crippled their boys by love. She loved you, but she didn't know how to train you to be a man. There were no boundaries, no expectations. You were not allowed to fail. And failure teaches us more about life than all the successes combined. She was your safety net. You did what you wanted to do, not what you needed to do to be a man. Your mother trained your sisters, your sister, your cousins, your aunt, and even Jane to cater to you and make you happy. That was the job of all the women in the family. They say if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, he'll never go hungry. You were never taught to fish. Your mother, consistent with the tradition from her family, gave you $10,000, Jane $10,000, and each of your children. All-inclusive paid vacations paid by your mother. You had a $260,000 loan that you got from your mother to further your own desires. Your job was to do you and to make you happy. The Rotary Club, active in school functions and fundraising, being the life of the party and the mayor of Middlesex. While your wife was working, you and your friend were at Lockmore, one of the most prestigious golf courses, smoking weed and doing cocaine. When he asked you how life was, you said, I'm living the dream. They say that an idle mind is the devil's workshop. While your main slave, your wife, who bore you 2 beautiful children, was required to work 12-hour days, and after 20 years, required to return to the workforce to maintain a fantasy life that you were allowed to live. You were free to sharpen your manipulative skills by being involved in the BDSM lifestyle. What I learned about that lifestyle from this trial is this. The lifestyle is non-conventional, but it's predicated on consensual exchange of power between the dominant, the master, and the submissive, the slave. You managed to manipulate that consensual lifestyle into a tool. It was your arsenal to prey on vulnerable women. Your philosophy was simple. What better way to personally destroy their dignity and respect? This is not what the lifestyle is about, but you manipulate it. And you use it to torture your victims mentally and physically. Master Bob, jack of manipulation, master of none. The only person you ever loved was yourself. Just like a predator, you use social media, the BDSM lifestyle, your family, your friends, to lure your victims with lies about whom you were and what you wanted. The truth hurts, the lies destroy. How could somebody so gentle, well-spoken, kind, considerate, be capable of having a dark heart? When your victims put their guards down and trusted you, you sucked them emotionally like a vampire, taking from them priceless attributes, their integrity, their self-worth, and their love. Real men lead, they don't need. You are a predator who sized up your prey. They long for love. You just wanted control. Your arsenal was composed of daily lies, EMs, text messages, letters, cards, trips. You used them to tell them what they wanted to hear so you could destroy their lives. You used their love and sacrifices as weapons against them. Your words and demeanor were your scalpel, which you used with experience and precision to take from women, your victims, what you wanted. Sex, love, dependence, self-worth, and most important, their integrity. When you were done, there was nothing more. They were nothing more than a gutted animal that you used and discarded. No one was off limits to you. Your mother, your family, your friends, your children, and your loving wife. You are a modern-day Trojan horse, a delight on the outside, but evil inside. Your love was a cancer, terminal and destructive. When you marry, your vow is to protect and provide. Yours was to deplete and destroy. You are a predator, not a provider. Stealing from your wife, treating her like a slave, requiring her to work 12 hours a day after having your 2 beautiful children, and then wanting her to work after she retired. Jane was physically destroyed on January 24, 2012. But she was mentally and emotionally destroyed by you a long time ago. Not only did you orchestrate and participate in taking her life, you tried to destroy her soul long before she was murdered. Cheating, bringing women into your marital bed while she was away with your children, looking for schools for them to attend. Lying. Your lies were your truth. Saying and doing anything to get what you wanted at her expense. Compromising her character. Telling the police about her smoking marijuana and having an open marriage. Her response to your deceitfulness was, I'm a fixer. If we had it before, we can have it again. I love my husband, and I want to try and make it. Your desire to have Rachel was obsessive. You openly conducted a relationship with this woman around your family and friends. You told her that this would be the last Christmas you will spend with Jane. You promised a mentally challenged man, Joe Gintz, a car and money to murder your wife. You exploited his desire to have his child, and you manipulated him to kill your wife, luring her into the garage. According to the medical examiner, her windpipe was broken, and her death was like drowning on land. Orchestrated by her husband, which she loved and adored. I can only imagine the heartbreak she felt to know that the man that took a vow to protect her would be the one that would destroy her. You took her lifeless body and threw in the back of her car like garbage, leaving her in a desolate part of Detroit, cold, alone, and dead. One of the greatest mistakes you made was to leave Jane in her Mercedes with that stage scene in Detroit. A city plagued by violence, you wouldn't know who would care. You alone. What they lacked in technology, they possessed in experience and common sense. The hunter was about to become the prey. Your lies, omissions, and desires to create possible motives for others to kill your wife only demonstrated your guilt. My dad said that when you tell one lie, you must remember the 100 lies you told to cover up the first lie. A multi-jurisdictional task force of local, state, and federal law enforcement came together to provide the evidence for the prosecution, your prosecution. They assembled their individual and collective training and experience to bring you to justice. Jane's murder symbolized that violence toward women in Wayne County will not be tolerated and will be prosecuted. Under the fearless leadership of Kim Worthy, the Wayne County prosecutor, and her short-staffed office, assembled a team of legal warriors. Lead prosecutor Lisa Lindsay, Robert Moran, Mark Henderline, Pat Muscat, and the dedicated Wayne County investigators and support staff. They dedicated countless hours, days, and months unraveling this murder. They worked long hours, slept, dreamed, and prayed that one day they would give justice to Jane. They refused to succumb to the public outcry and pressure from influential and prominent leaders in the community who wrote negative and threatening letters and even committed to picketing their office if the case was not expeditiously prosecuted. With more than 1,200 homicides committed in Wayne County between 2012 through 2014, this fearless team managed to review and catalog a terabyte, and I still don't know what that is, worth of evidence to receive a unanimous verdict in this complex case. On December 18, 2014, they succeeded. Justice for Jane was served. 16 legally untrained in the law people were selected from over 200 in Wayne County to listen to the mountains of evidence, salacious details, complex legal theories, mountains of evidence. What they lacked in legal training, they made up in dedication, perseverance, and a desire to render justice. For 9 weeks, this case was their responsibility. They abandoned their own needs, family, and work demands. Truly, they were a living example of democracy at work in Wayne County. You now feel that the world is against you, but you were Jane's world, and you destroyed that with your lies as a co-conspirator in her death. You believed you were smarter than God. Even God separates light from darkness. You lived in 2 worlds. Light, your family, community, and friends, and darkness, where your lies were your truth and your truth was a lie. Taking advantage of desperate women. You allowed those worlds to collide and cause an explosion to destroy you, your family, your wife, and everything that once mattered to you. You once said you were living the dream, now you experiencing a nightmare. You created. You destroyed your life and the lives you touch were damaged by your touch. I have no mercy for you. The Bible says to be absent from the body is to be present with Christ. Jane is an angel of light. However, I would like to say to the family of Jane that forgiveness is never about the other person. It's your willingness to no longer be bound by another person's madness. And it's not saying that what you did was okay, but it's saying I am not going to let what you did ruin my happiness forever. As a judge on this side of eternity, today there will be justice for Jane. As to count 1, conspiracy to commit first-degree premeditated murder, the court is going to sentence you
The sentence is under 750.316 till mandatory life.
to mandatory life.
Mhm.
Count 2, the court is going to sentence you to no less than 19, no more than 40. Count 3 is life without parole. Count 4, obstruction of justice, 1 to 5, and witness bribery, intimidation, 2 to 10.
May I have one moment? Judge, on the sentence for the second count solicitation, that is technically above the guidelines, I believe.
18 to 40.
Thank you, Judge.
Very good. You have 42 days to appeal my decision. Our court attorney is going to be appointed to you. You have 42 days to appeal my decision. You will be given 618 days credit. That concludes this matter. Thank you. Court is adjourned.
You signed the form?
Sign the form.
Take him out.
Thank you, Judge.
Take him out.
He signed the form. Have a good day, Judge.
That's for the appeal, right there.
And make sure you send that in.
Yeah, Mike. Sign your name right there, just as you. Then they're gonna give you a copy of it. And then they're gonna be able to send in the balance of it, and they'll appoint a lawyer for your appeal. That's it. That bad? All set. This is your third page. There we go.
I know. This is my diabetes medicine. And I think that's why I've been